confusion. What do we go for? The president, the Supreme Court? I don't know, but I feel like a lot of Nigerians right now are confused. But here on the show, we will try to be getting answers to this question. But first, before we even go on to the whole confusion thing, okay, let me start with Mr. Abdulaziz here. How did you take the president's speech, well, when he addressed the nation, saying the 1,500 Naira notes will cease to be legal tender, but the 200 Naira notes will be recirculated? How did you accept that news?
I think is doing something that contrary to the law of the nation, because Supreme Court remain the highest court, if I'm not mistaken. So when we have case in Supreme Court, the judgment has not been passed, and the government, when he was being appointed, the president was being appointed, he has made a vow that they're going to obey the rules of the land. But with what is happening, it's not really taking to that. So it's kind of I'm totally confused. I don't expect that from Mr. President. But what I actually saw that is trying to balance the situation. You say he's trying to maintain his status quo because he is the one that give approval to this, and also you don't want to disobey Supreme Court at the same time. Because if you want to disobey Supreme Court, like just okay, no, those money cease to be legal tender. Are you getting?
Yes,
so you're trying to strike a balance between the two.
Being diplomatic?
Being diplomatic, so that's just it.
All right, now let us move on to the lawyer in the building, Festus Ogo. The president, it seems as if he completely ignored the Supreme Court's order that put a halt on the old Naira swap, and it continued to be legal tender until they hear the case in court. That is February 15. But before that, the president came up to tell us that the 1,000 Naira and 500 Naira notes will cease to be legal tender. And because they understand the plight and suffering of the people, he ordered the recirculation of the old 200 Naira notes, perhaps to put a ease on the burden of the people. So let us look at that move there. Is it proper for the president of the nation to go contrary against what the Supreme Court has said?
Well, I think a good way to start is to say that the current Fuji house of commotion ravaging the country could have been avoided if we are a country that has a leadership that respects the rule of law. And I'm saying this because when the Supreme Court of Nigeria speaks, all other authorities and persons must bow on that altar of justice. Look, the Supreme Court has said, well, before we hear the case before us, they gave an order pending the hearing of that case that status quo should be maintained. The simple meaning being that let the old notes still be in circulation. Let the status quo be maintained. The Honorable Attorney General of the Federation has also subjected himself to the jurisdiction of the court. He has filed his court processes contesting the jurisdiction of the court. Yet, he came out openly to say that the interim order of the Supreme Court will be obeyed by the federal government. Ordinarily, on the 15th, that order should have expired if the hearing was held. But because of the trunk of the states that applied to join the suit, the Supreme Court said, no, we cannot take the hearing now. We have to join those seeking to be joined. And the matter was then adjourned. Because the order was given pending the hearing of that suit, or pending the hearing of the application before the Supreme Court, the implication is that that order of the Supreme Court ceased to subsist unless and until the Supreme Court takes the application before it. Now, when there is a valid order of the court, the implication is that the order must be obeyed by all authorities and persons. It means that whether you are the president, you are a governor, you are the vice president, be you so high The law is above you. And that is why it is expedient on the president of our country to have obeyed the clear and unequivocal order of the Supreme Court. Let the status quo be remained. But when we woke up on the 16th, we saw a broadcast where the president of our country is saying something that is contrariwise to the valid and subsisting order of the Supreme Court. In clear terms, that is executive rascality. That is a gross disobedience to the valid and subsisting order of the Supreme Court. That is a violation of the sacred principles of separation of power. That is a violation of the principles, sacred principles of the rule of law that holds democracy together. That is to show you that indeed rule of law is no longer a thing in our country. And it is quite surprising that a lot of our people are shocked by the action of the president. Was it not in this same country that the court ordered Nnamdi Kanu to be released? That order of the court was not obeyed. It was in this same court that the Chief Justice of Nigeria was controversially and unconstitutionally removed by the leadership of this country, by the executive of this country. Yet, some people were supporting it at the time, including some of the governors today that are acting holier than thou. Today, all of us, we are reaping the fruit of impunity. All of us in this country are now feeling what it means for the executive not to obey the orders of the court. Was it not in this same country that El Zakizaki and the wife were released by the courts? Yet the federal government of this country did not respect the court orders.
Okay, but let us look at it this way. If the Supreme Court says something like, okay, you should release these people, and not pointing to anyone specifically, but let's assume that the federal government, with their own executive power, with their own foresight, feels like if this person or so is released back to the society, it might cause chaos. It might not even be for Nigerians, but even for their own safety, because for whatever thing they got convicted, you don't know if they've incurred the anger of a lot of people, and introducing them back to the society might be dangerous. So let's say that because of this, the federal government feel like, okay, we know that the Supreme Court has said this, but perhaps this might be the best. Is there no point that both the Supreme Court and now the judiciary and the executive arm of government could come together and reach an agreement as, okay, this is why we are saying it this way, and this is why we are saying it this way too, and then just come to the middle and reach agreement? No,
there is no justification for this disregard of the orders of the court. Orders of court are meant to be obeyed without, any form of, review. The president cannot review the valid and subsisting order of the court, and that is why, for some of us, we see the utterances of the president. I wouldn't call it an order. I use the word advisedly. Say utterances of the president as a contempt of court. But the president cannot be arrested or prosecuted because he has immunity under Section 308 of the Constitution. If not, once the Supreme Court says this, the president does not have the power, does not have the right, does not even have the moral authority to review in whatever shape or manner the valid and subsisting order of the Supreme Court. And that is the point we are making. Now, it is also important that we emphasize that once the Supreme Court has spoken, any other thing that the president says in law amounts to nothing. And that is why somehow, while we know that the intention of the governors and other forces that are supporting the valid and subsisting order of the Supreme Court might not be sincere, but we are left with no option than to agree with them. Because, look, the Supreme Court has said a thing, the president has said another thing. It is not for the president to interpret the law. The president cannot be the judge, cannot be the accuser, and I cannot be the complainant at the same time. The president ought to avoid this kind of confusion that a lot of our people are currently into. The president ought to just abide by the ruling of the Supreme Court or the order of the Supreme Court. If not, we wouldn't have been confused now. Today, the governor of a state is saying, if you fail to receive the old note, I will revoke your certificate of occupancy. The governor said that, I think a few days ago, the governor of Ogun State said, if you fail to collect the old note, I will revoke your C of O as a business concern. The president is saying, well, you can still collect 200 naira. You should not collect 500 naira. You should not collect 1,000 naira. Whereas both 200 naira, 500 and 1,000 naira were redesigned at the same time. So what is the intention behind it? You know, it gives some of us cause to worry that at the end of the day, what is the president or the federal government of Nigeria, what do they intend to achieve with this policy? Some say vote buying. I say no. It is not the duty of President Muhammadu Buhari to curb vote buying. It is for INEC in consonance with other security agencies.
But would you not agree that the presidency or the executive and legislative arm of government, it is also their own duty to come with formulation policies that will support the activities of whatever agency is guarding some aspects of our society, so that it won't be like, oh, it's just one sector that is fighting against something and then the other sectors are just keeping neutral?
Well, let me quickly say this before I pause for now, that the government of our country, the presidency, lacks the moral right to even talk about fighting vote buying. Was it not in this same country that during the electioneering season in 2019 and late 2018, that the vice president of this country, who was then the vice presidential candidate of APC, was going to markets sharing money as trader money? I didn't mention that is vote buying, but at the electioneering season, we saw the height of trader money, where the vice president himself was sharing cash to market men and market women under the trader money scheme. I have never seen any other policy that encourages vote buying more than that. So
okay,
it is
well,
not,
it has not been established that this policy going on is to curb vote buying.
No, there are arguments.
There are arguments.
There are
but we cannot really face that controversy right now, because it's still like, should I say, conspiracy theory? We are not sure of what is what. So far be it from us to say that, oh, okay, maybe this is it or this is that. We just have to leave that open for now. And now, talking about, you said something earlier about the 200 Naira notes being allowed to go back into circulation. And the president really said that they are not blind to the plight that Nigerians are facing. And the reason they approved that 200 Naira notes be reintroduced into circulation is to ease the suffering of the people. So I'm coming back to, to Mr. Abdulaziz now. Do you feel like the reintroduction of 200 Naira notes in circulation has done a good job, or will do, or is doing a good job to really show that, okay, yes, it's going to reduce the suffering of the people?
Well, I'm not saying that way. Why am I saying this? People have their money in the bank. They don't have access to it. Now you are giving out 200 Naira notes. The replacement of what? I don't know if you are getting me. See, there is something we need to understand here. Naira design, cash swapping, cashless or cash-like policy, then financial inclusion. By definition, what do you understand by Naira redesign? Don't let us fool ourselves here. Our Naira has never been redesigned. They just change the color. What do you mean by design? So they just change the color. Nothing was being designed. So that's where I'm kind of confused. Somewhere I'm totally confused. Because I look at, okay, if you want to design Naira, okay, maybe, or this is what we are seeing there, you change the pattern. There are some features that have to be changed. But nothing changed. Meaning that there is something fishing somewhere that is not well known to Nigerians. For that to quickly take effect, to quickly change the color of the Naira, and not what they intended to do. What they intended to redesign, what the government signed for is to redesign the note, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But were the note being designed? No. The color were just being changed.
Well, some might argue that the 200 Naira notes now have semblance to the old 500 Naira notes. And the new 500 Naira notes have some semblance to the old 200 Naira notes. And the 1000 Naira notes have semblance to the 50 Naira notes. Would you not qualify that as perhaps redesigned from what they were to what is obtainable now?
Well, I don't see any design there. If you have the Naira, you can please on the table, let everybody justify that. If there's any design, I'm not saying any design. Just the color will be changing. Then the number, the 200 Naira notes, the 500 Naira note now take position of 200 Naira note. Why the 200 Naira note is okay? The 200 Naira take position of 500 Naira note, isn't it?
Yes, they looks like the 500
just the color.
Naira
Just change
notes.
the color, then the figure there. So nothing was redesigned. So that's on that. Now, another thing we have to understand: we don't need to model things together. The policy, people are talking about the policy, the policy, the policy. It's not about the policy now. It's not about the policy. The policy has been existing since 2012, and quite a number of smart policies have taken place then. But one thing that we need to understand, we have to start this one day. But if I don't know if there is any motive behind this, for people to say maybe they have some kind of political undertone, I wouldn't want to believe that, but everybody has rights to his or her opinion. You're getting it? But we should try to differentiate between the policy and the present predicament. The policy has been extended far back 2012. And the policy has been implemented one way or the other. But there was no force to the policy. Because this policy gave birth to quite a number of fintech companies we are seeing now. For this financial inclusion to really thrive. So these are the mechanisms to really drive financial inclusion in Nigeria. And one thing I want Nigeria to understand here, when we are talking about cashless or cashless policy, you don't expect the amount of money, the amount of cash being taken by the government to come back to the circulation. No. You shouldn't. So that's where people are getting confused. Okay, I put 100,000 into the bank, I want 100,000, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So what CBN is lacking and lagging here is communication and education. They ought to educate people about what cashless policy is all about, and the mechanism have been put in place before now. I could recollect about 2016 when OP emerged, which they have O-Ride, O-Food, things like that. These are bouquet of financial products and services that people can have access to, and their comfort zone without even a banking account. But because we all believe that financial inclusion is all about you having a bank account, no. There are some people now, they don't have a bank account, and they are doing seamless transactions at the comfort of their zone through their phone. So all these fintech company, there is a particular, I wouldn't want to mention any name, there's a particular fintech company that was being bought into by the American people. Indigenous company here in Nigeria. Just Tech. They are into fintech. And that what brought the company to limelight. So this thing has been in place, but there is no drive. There is no drive and there is no force. So people now think, okay, maybe the government is trying to force us to embrace financial inclusion, things like that. So that's why I said that they are kind of confused. I'm kind of confused so we don't need to model together. Let's understand the policy, let's understand the cashless society, then Naira design whatsoever. So that's where we now have an issue, is that of Naira design. If they design the Naira, the policy will fly. Gradually, it has been flying already. Gradually.
But would you agree that Nigerians most times are often needing extra motivation? Because let us take a good look at this. the deadline was there before. It was extended to February 10. And up to that February 10, we still have people clinging on to their old notes. They just refuse to take it to the bank. And now that the president has said that, okay, the February 10 deadline still stands, but the thing is, 200 Naira is still going to be allowed, but 500 and 1,000 Naira will not be allowed. That announcement has been going on since last year. And up to the deadline, we still have people with their old notes. Could we say that that might still be the thing if we are trying to get Nigerians to embrace this cashless policy? If they are not pushed, perhaps we might still be having the same issues that Nigerians would not embrace this cashless policy. So can we really fault this motivation, so to speak, that the federal government is giving us to really go for this cashless policy?
Let's look at it from this perspective. People believe that nothing works in Nigeria. Are you getting it? So when that pronouncement was being made, they believe, oh, it won't work. It won't work. That's our general belief. But it must work one day. We have to correct that impression. We have to correct that impression. It must work one day. So you don't need to motivate anybody to do anything. You don't need to motivate them. Just make a policy that will work and stay by it. All these Western countries that people are rushing to, because they know what they want, they know how to go about it, and they implement it, and it's working for them. And people know. Look at all these our celebrities, all these governors that go out there. Before going out of this country, you see a lot of people, a lot of what do you call them? Is it bodyguard that follow them to the airport, carry their bag. But when you get there, they carry it themselves. Nobody help them to carry a bag. So they will change their mentality. So we have to correct it one day. That's a major problem. We believe it won't work. All this kind of big manity, things like that in Nigeria, it's really affecting us.
Yes, indeed.
So we don't need to try to motivate people to do anything. All we just need to do just to educate them, change their mentality, give them good relation about financial inclusion, about cash policy. Then I know my people, they will adapt. They will adapt.
Yes. Well, let us also, and now still talking about conflicting policy in some states. Now we have states that have come up. We have states like Kaduna State, Jigawa State, Ogun State, that they've maintained that the 1,500 Naira notes is still legal in their state. And now we've not really reached that conclusion yet. Which are we to follow? Let's say, for example, now states that their state governors have already declared that the 1,500 Naira note still remains a legal tender there. Is it not in conflict? Of course, we know it's in conflict with what the president has said, but is it not in like some opposition? Or are we coming to a era where true federalism is starting to take place in Nigeria, that despite the fact that the federal government says something, what is obtainable in some states might still be different, despite the fact that that is the say of federal government on it?
See, where law ends, tyranny begins, confusion begins, lawlessness begins. Once you shut your eyes off the law or you violate the law, there will be tyranny. Once the executive president took the law into his hands, you begin to see others doing the same. The Supreme Court said a thing. The president said another thing. Now the governors are saying, well, why we cannot fault them too, we are going to follow what the Supreme Court says. Because Nigeria is operating a democracy, not a monarchy. It is a law that guides us. Because the office of the president is a creation of law. The Supreme Court is a creation of law. And this same constitution says that the decision of the Supreme Court supersedes any other decision. That means every other person has to bow on the altar of the Supreme Court. The president has said otherwise or contrariwise. Now the governors are saying, we are not following what the president says, practically because this is not a monarchy. We are following what the Supreme Court says. If we are to weigh it, well, the governors are correct. If ours is a country where the rule of law operates truly, we ought to follow stricto sensu the position of the Supreme Court. But there is confusion in the land. Would the banks, who are regulated by the Central Bank of Nigeria, say they would listen to the governors? Absolutely not. Because even the financial institution under Section 251 of the Constitution are under, the CBN. If you look at the exclusive list of the Constitution, the financial institutions, CBN and the rest of them, exclusive list for the federal government. They are regulated by the federal government. So you can see how we are reaping the fruits of impunity in the country. Now, an important point that I think we must make is that, you see, cashless policy, we've been talking about cashless policy even before I went to law school. I've been hearing about cashless policy. Nigeria wants to implement cashless policy. I agree that someday we must start the full implementation of cashless policy. But we cannot just do a copy and paste approach in implementation of policy in this country. Each country has its own peculiarity. And that is why statistics have it that less than 50% of our country men are unbanked. That means that less than 50% of us do not have bank accounts. I know people who are millionaires. I know people who are making, a good source of income. Yet they do not have bank accounts. We have a good number of them. So if we are coming with that kind of policy, it shouldn't be so sudden. In my view, Section 20, subsection 3 of the CBN Act mandates the Central Bank of Nigeria to give Nigerians reasonable notice when in a policy like this, in the design, it should give Nigerians reasonable notice. The question that has been agitating my mind as a lawyer and as a citizen of this country is that within late November, when the redesigned currency was unveiled on TV, and the end of January 2023, could that be said to be a reasonable notice given to our people? Whereas, while our people were going to the bank to deposit the money, we are not seeing the new currency. The questions we'll be asking ourselves is, where is this money? We are going to bank to deposit the money, but we cannot find the money. So to me, as a citizen of Nigeria, most times my approach to issue as an attorney for the people is, financial experts, economists begin to speak their grammar. I say, this thing, how is it affecting me? That is how I approach issue. We can't find the money anywhere. We deposit the money, we can't find the money. We want to withdraw, we can't find the money. ATM, nothing, we can't find the money. And you are giving a deadline. To me, that deadline is not reasonable. Particularly, look at the electioneering season that we are now. By Saturday next week, we are going, some of us will be traveling to our villages, to our towns. We are traveling home for the festivity. How do we travel home when the cash are not at hand? Even INEC has now written to the CBN for the CBN to make available to them cash with which they would, conduct the election. So if INEC can write to the CBN for cash, that's portend a larger trouble for the society.
But
so
how about
think
Nigerians being encouraged to adopt other forms of making payment? For example, you saying that you want to travel, you wanting to travel, you could as well just transfer, pay with your ATM and all that. And this not means that in a way, have already cushioned the effects of not having enough cash in circulation. According to the CBN governor, he said about 3 trillion naira was in circulation, which was way too much. Now we should have about 700 billion naira in circulation. And according to him, he said it seems some politicians are hoarding this new naira notes. In that regard, can we really blame the CBN governor for not having for not giving enough money? From their own part, it seems they've already done more than enough, like 700 billion naira in circulation. And they say if they were to release about, let's say, 1 trillion naira into the circulation, but it cannot go past that, because the CBN should be able to control the money that is in circulation. So now that it has been established that about 700 billion naira is in circulation and some people are holding it, can we still blame the CBN?
Yes. The CBN still has to be blamed. My question is, why is this policy coming few months to the election? The CBN, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari has been in power since 2015. Why is the policy coming now? See, I can't even remember the last time I've been to a bank. That is to tell you that I have been so immersed into running a digital economy. I've embraced it for a very long time. I can't remember the last time I stepped my foot into a bank. But I'm saying that the large majority of our people are currently going through untold hardship and pain as a result of this policy. And have you forgotten that Section 14(2)(b) of the Constitution says the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government? The people are in pain.
Okay, let me use this example that the finance minister said. He said if you have an injury and you want to start treating it, the process of treatment is usually much more painful than the injury itself. But after you treat it, then there is relief. You start enjoying the benefits of the treatment that you go through. So despite the fact that we agree that the federal government have to take care of the welfare of the people, but what about the means at which the welfare of the people have to be catered for that would benefit everyone completely? In the long run tend to be a little hard in the beginning. We also have the CBN government that is promising us that this would actually help our GDP. With all these excuses that have been tabled down for us, is it not enough for Nigerians to actually sit down, reconsider, be patient, and see how things turn out?
I mean, people are dying. People are suffering. And yet, they are asking us to be patient. This is the reason, in all honesty, in all honesty, this is the reason why you see that some people are protesting here and there. People are frustrated. I'm not talking as a lawyer who only sits in chambers. I'm talking as a citizen of this country that knows what an average Nigerian goes through on a daily basis. I can tell you that the frustration of a lot of our people caused by the inefficiency in the implementation of this policy is the reason why you see that our streets are filled up with people. Do you know that as it stands now, people cannot access this money? Yes, there will be a quite, some sort of pain, some sort of hardship in the beginning. Yes. But what we are saying is that the notice is not reasonable.
Okay, what do you have to add to that?
Well, I think when I started, I made it clear that we have to understand one thing. Like himself now, he's missing it all. He's talking about the policy is too short. And you yourself said you've been adopted to this policy far back. You don't know when last you've got into the bank. So it's not about the policy. Get it right. The policy has been there since 12 years ago. It's not short. So don't let us model things together. It's not short. The policy has been there since 12 years ago. Not now. It's not last year. It's not 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And you can also testify from that from your statements. Are you getting it? So that's why I said you have to get something clear. There is policy. There is a Naira design. Are you getting it? And we are trying to embrace cash lights. The policy has been there far back. Now, the major issue here that brought about all this crisis we are having is the Naira redesign, not actually the policy. So let's get that clear first.
And would you also agree with what the CBN governor has said about the amount of money that has to be in circulation? Because since Nigerians are complaining that this money is not enough, and they are telling us that it is risky for us to have over this amount of money in circulation, is that not reasonable enough for Nigerians to actually keep calm?
Yeah, you say we reason in a different way. But one thing I so much understand when it comes out to about inflation is when much money purchasing few goods. And from this analysis, it indicates that we have much money out there. Then automatically there's going to be an inflation. So you don't expect that money taken away to be pumped back into the society. Are you getting it? So that's one thing we need to understand. That's why I said it's about education orientation. Are you getting it? We need to reorientate our people. Let them understand the fact that, come, we are trying to help you. We are trying to help the nation. But the but there, of which I could not talk for anyone, is this cash swapping and Naira redesign. If you are now telling me that, why coming at this crucial time, I don't have an answer to that. And that's the genesis of the problem we are facing now, not the policy. We have to understand that. Now, we should have not even have this issue if CBN should have collaborated with us as an association to do what we call cash swapping or give us access to cash. People going to bank, Lagos is the largest city in West Africa when it comes to economic value. Now, you now excluded Lagos and Abuja from cash swapping. You now take it to the village. How many transactions is going out there in the village? Millions of transactions are going out in. You'll be surprised. I don't even know how to operate the ATM. When I got there, the security have to guide me through. For how long have I done that? And when last have I entered the bank? I don't do that. I have people that work for me that are sent to the bank. Now they are trying to take business away from us because they didn't carry us along. And that's the consequence you are seeing now. Assuming there is categorization of agents whereby we have automatically, just like what you said, we don't obey law. We don't obey law in this country. CBN has the rules and regulation. The agent has been categorized already, but they are not following the pattern. There is pattern, there is structure on the ground. If that structure or the pattern has been properly followed, there won't be any issue. What you need to do, okay, these are the standard agents, these are the super agents, these are the operator. Let those operators identify with their standard agent. Standard agents are those that are within mortar and bricks. Then why the retail? We have retail agents as well. Those ones are the ones within a kiosk. So money can be allocated to all these standard agents, whereby they serve all the retail agents within their community. So we'll be seeing Q on the ATM. People won't be protesting. So that's the area where CBN is lacking and lagging. And I give kudos to Governor of Edo State. He has agreed to work with our member in Edo State. Daily they are giving them 8 million. So in Edo State, it's going to be the most peaceful state as we talk now. When it comes to issue of crisis, you won't find any crisis there. Because the governor and the CBN and the CBN controller, the governor, they work together to achieve this. They bring us into the system whereby they, okay, these are the registered association that we reckon with, which is AMBAN, Association of Money and Bank Agents in Nigeria. Then they decide to work with us. Okay, we give social amount on a daily basis. Then there should be a record on how that money is being given out. And we are following the principle that we don't give out more than 20,000 per person. So if you are not following the record, then there's going to be a sanction on you.
Yes, indeed.